This is a short video explaining how to add a new site or asset to the system. This is a question that we get quite often from our customers, in that if, for example, the client that you're looking a job for hasn't provided you with an asset list and the job that you're trying to log is for a property that doesn't belong in your system yet, then you need to add it at this point. And sometimes the different options that become available to you when you're doing that can cause a little bit of confusion. So I thought I'd do this little video just to explain that and hopefully clear up a few common questions that we get. Normally this question would arise when you're adding a new job. So you'll have received a job card or an email or something from your client requesting some work. So you'll have gone into here and you'll have maybe even put the client name in. So I'm going to use our training client for now. And then, provided you're not using any sort of parent sites or blocks or anything like that, you'd normally go for the asset or the property field here, and you'd begin to type some part of the property details, the address or the postcode. So let's say this is for number 1 Church Street. So I would do a number 1 and I would start typing, and as we can see I'm not finding any results now. So that would indicate that this property doesn't exist in the system. So once I'm satisfied that it doesn't exist, I need to add that property before we can log the job. So that's what I'd like to show you now. The way we begin is by pressing the plus button here next to our asset or property field. So we click on the green plus, and this takes us into our client wizard at the customer setup, where we've arrived in at the new asset page within the wizard. So what we need to do now is we need to complete some information here about the new site. You'll notice here that there's a site field. You'd only need to use that if you're using blocks and properties within blocks. So say for example you'd created a block of flats and the property you're adding now is one of those flats that's held within that block, then this is the parent site. So you'd need to specify that. But for a lot of jobs where you're simply creating a domestic property that doesn't belong to another block, you can leave that blank. The first field that we need to be interested in for the majority of our assets would be the asset reference or the property reference. That could also be captioned as UPRN in your own systems. This is a unique identifier for the property. So this may be provided to you by your client. If it isn't, you could simply make one up and the system will tell you whether or not you've provided a unique value. Or alternatively, if you don't want to make one up, the system will generate one for you when you save the record. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave it blank for now and the system can generate one for me. It is possible to set up asset templates which will automatically complete this field here, but to be perfectly honest, I would type that in yourself because you will know what you're setting up. So the asset field, this is a field that you can use to describe the property. So you could just simply call it a site, or you could call it a detached house or a bungalow or anything like that as a unique identifier for that particular property so that you know what it is when you're searching for it. I'm going to call it a detached house, and then we would put the address in here. So I'm going to go with number 1 Church Street, Stockport, SK1 2BC. I've just made that address and postcode up. We could then complete additional information regarding the region. If you're unsure what that is, then do get in touch and we can help you with that. And then we've got some additional fields here below surrounding the invoicing addresses, and this is where some confusion can arise. To try and clear up that confusion, the invoicing fields here, all this information, this is only really required if the site that you're putting into the system right now has got a specific invoicing requirement that is different to that of the client. So for example, if this particular property of 1 Church Street, we would only ever be invoicing by default the actual property or the resident that lives at the property and not the client of Epix systems, then you might want to complete the invoicing address here to allow the invoice to be sent to that location. If we leave this blank, it will take the system default for the invoicing requirements, and that takes its invoicing addresses from a whole host of different places working backwards through the system. So it could come from contract, it could from the client. But if you put something in here this is where the invoice will automatically go to unless you change it when you're creating a job. So for this example, I want all invoices and anything to do with this particular property to go to our original client here. So I'm going to leave this section completely blank. Moving down here, this is the contact details for the site. So this could be a site caretaker, or it could even be the resident. So you would fill in the contact details as appropriate, and so on. Down here, this is very important. This is the table of available contracts for the client that you could log work for against this site. So as we can see, we've got a choice of 4 contracts set up for this particular customer. So which types of work or which contracts do you want to be able to log jobs for number 1 Church Street? So whichever that is, you would tick the applicable ones here. So I'm going to tick all 4. And if we want to create any links to work types, say you're doing some scheduled servicing, for example, if this is relevant, you could tick those as well to link the property to the work types. Once you're done, you simply press the green Add button to add the site. And you'll see here that we've got a nice green message at the top of the screen to tell you that that asset has now been created. So if we now press the Finish button, or simply press the X here, we can now go back to our job screen, and in the asset field we can now type the address that we've just added, and as we can see here, number 1 Church Street has been added. So if we select that, it's identified that Bob was our contact with that telephone number, and we've also got links to the 4 contracts that we link that property to. So when we do complete the job information and we come down here to the contract field, we've now got a choice of the 4 that we selected. And we'll notice as well at the bottom here that the invoice address for this job has picked up the default invoice address of the client, and that's because we didn't provide a specific one for that property. So the process of adding a new property is as simple as that. If we repeat this by doing again a creation of a simple job, once again for our training client, and we want to now add, say, number 2 Church Street. Again, we can see that this isn't found, so we would press the plus button. Here we could provide the property reference if we wished. I'm going to simply call this a site because I don't know what the property is at the moment. I would type the address here as I want it to appear on any documentation, obviously the postcode as well. Of course, I could use the find address tool with that postcode if we were using a real property. I want the invoicing to go to the client, so I'm not going to bother filling any of this in because I don't want any site-specific invoicing. My contact is going to be a chap called Barry, and I don't know his phone number yet. And I only want to be able to do reactive works for this property. I press Add. Then when I close this and go back to our job entry screen and type 2 Church Street, there it is. And then we can see we've only got the 1 contract available, but the property has been added. If you've got any questions about anything you've just seen or would like any further guidance at all, then don't hesitate to give us a shout.